The motorcycle world just got flipped on its head. Indian released a $9,000 bombshell, the Scout 60, and Harley Davidson wasn't ready. In one move, Indian shattered Harley's dominance and rewrote the rules of American cruisers forever. But how did a budget bike trigger the downfall of a motorcycle empire? What's happening? No one expected Harley Davidson's biggest threat to come from Indian at just $9,000. One bike, one price, and suddenly the entire American cruiser market was flipped upside down overnight. The moment Indian revealed the all-new Scout 60, the entire motorcycle world stopped. A sleek, mid-sized cruiser with real American muscle, the Scout 60 looked every bit like a premium machine. But then came the gut punch: its price. Starting at just $9,999, the Scout 60 wasn't merely a new bike, it was a direct, unapologetic attack on Harley Davidson's dominance. But Harley's biggest problem wasn't the price, it was what the Scout 60 revealed about them. How Harley let the Sportster rot. The Harley Davidson Sportster once defined the entry-level cruiser. It was the bike that thousands of American riders used to learn, to ride, and to fall in love with motorcycles. But somewhere along the way, Harley stopped evolving it. Year after year, they rolled out the same basic frame, the same air-cooled engine architecture, and the same stripped-down features, all while the price kept creeping higher. By 2024, a new Harley Davidson Sportster could easily set a rider back $15,000 or more, often without even including modern essentials like ride modes, traction control, or cruise control. And while Harley raised prices, they ignored critical areas where riders' expectations were changing. Engine technology stood still. Ergonomics went untouched. Tech features were non-existent. The world moved forward. Harley clung to nostalgia. Their refusal to modernize wasn't an accident. It was a strategy based on arrogance. They believed the Harley name alone would keep them safe. That arrogance opened the door for Indian, because the moment Indian announced the Scout 60, it exposed just how badly Harley Davidson had let the Sportster rot. And Indian was about to expose just how badly Harley had fallen behind. And if you're loving this story, hit subscribe and drop a like. It helps more riders see that there is a better alternative to the Harley Sportster. Now here's how Indian built a better bike for less. The brilliance of the Scout 60 wasn't just the price tag, it was how Indian achieved that price without sacrificing the soul of an American cruiser. At the heart of the Scout 60 is a 999 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled 60-degree V-twin engine. This wasn't some budget throwaway motor. It produced 85 horsepower and 65 pound-feet of torque, figures that humiliated the outdated Sportster lineup. It wasn't just fast for an entry-level cruiser, it was fast, period. But Indian's genius wasn't limited to engine specs. They built the Scout 60 on a modular platform designed for scalability and cost efficiency. By sharing components, frames, and engineering across the Scout lineup, Indian slashed production costs without cutting quality. They partnered with global manufacturing networks to streamline supply chains and minimize overhead, something Harley's bloated legacy operations couldn't match. The Scout 60's re-engineered tubular frame provided superior handling and a low center of gravity, making it more approachable for new riders and more nimble for veterans. Its class-leading low seat height gave smaller riders more confidence, while mid-controls and 32 ergonomic options made it endlessly customizable for everyone else. This wasn't a cheap bike. It was a well-engineered modern cruiser designed to demolish Harley's last excuse, that premium meant expensive. Indian proved you could have American style, muscle, and tech without mortgaging your house. Harley's corporate breakdown. Inside Harley's boardroom, panic turned to paralysis. The announcement of the Scout 60 wasn't just a product launch, it was a direct assault on Harley's identity. And yet, when the crisis hit, Harley Davidson's leadership responded not with boldness, but with denial. Initial meetings at Harley Davidson headquarters were filled with finger-pointing and disbelief. Executives clung to the belief that their customers wouldn't abandon them, that brand loyalty would be enough to weather the storm. They dismissed the Scout 60 as a gimmick, a flash in the pan. Some board members argued that slashing prices or updating the Sportster would betray Harley's premium image. Behind the scenes, however, panic spread like wildfire. Dealerships began reporting that walk-in customers were no longer asking about the Sportster. They were asking if Harley had anything to match Indian's new bike. Sales managers sounded the alarm that younger riders were leaving without buying, heading straight to Indian showrooms instead. But the internal fight at Harley was fierce. Half the leadership team argued for an immediate price cut and a crash program to modernize the Sportster. The other half insisted on preserving margins and the Harley mystique. Meetings dragged on, decisions were delayed, and every day that passed, more riders walked away. Harley Davidson wasn't just facing a product crisis, it was facing a cultural collapse. The brand that once defined American motorcycles suddenly looked old, expensive, and irrelevant. The sales stampede Indian created. In 3 months, Indian did what Harley Davidson couldn't do in 3 years. The Scout 60 didn't just launch, it detonated like a bomb inside the motorcycle market. What started as a disruptive price announcement quickly transformed into a full-blown sales stampede that blindsided everyone in Milwaukee. The first wave hit Indian dealerships within days of the reveal. Showrooms that previously saw modest foot traffic suddenly found themselves overwhelmed. Riders who had never considered an Indian motorcycle before lined up to see the Scout 60 in person. Test ride slots booked out weeks in advance. Dealers reported phone lines ringing nonstop, with one simple question coming from every caller: is the $9,000 Scout 60 in stock? By the end of the first month, Indian dealers across the country were reporting sellouts. Pre-orders flooded in faster than the factories could build the bikes. Riders who had been saving for a Harley Davidson Sportster were now abandoning those plans and placing deposits on the Scout 60 instead. The numbers were staggering. Indian's year-over-year sales in the mid-size cruiser segment surged by more than 75% in just 90 days. The damage to Harley Davidson's numbers was immediate and brutal. Their Sportster lineup, once the go-to entry-level cruiser, saw a sharp sales decline. Dealers who had comfortably moved Sportsters for years suddenly couldn't give them away. In some regions, Sportster sales dropped by more than 30% in a single quarter. And it wasn't just about new bikes. Used Sportster sales dried up as well, as buyers shifted their attention entirely to the Scout 60. Indian's success wasn't a fluke. It was a calculated strike that exposed just how fragile Harley Davidson's hold on the market had become. But the Scout 60's soaring sales figures were only the beginning. Because what Indian took next wasn't measured in units sold, it was measured in loyalty lost. How Indian stole Harley's hardcore riders. Indian understood that selling motorcycles wasn't enough. To truly break Harley Davidson's dominance, they needed to win over the people who swore they'd never ride anything else. So they went on the offensive. Indian dealerships rolled out aggressive demo days, inviting riders to test the Scout 60 against any bike on the lot, including the Sportster. They offered jaw-dropping trade-in incentives, giving thousands of dollars to riders willing to swap their Harleys for a brand new Indian. For many in the Harley-Davidson world, it felt like betrayal. Harley dealerships reported stories of once loyal customers returning to cancel service appointments because they had traded in their Sportster for a Scout 60. Indian didn't just steal customers, they stole culture. And this wasn't just about price or performance. Indian had hit something far deeper, a growing frustration among Harley riders who felt abandoned by a brand that had stopped listening. For the first time in decades, the unthinkable was happening. The Harley-Davidson identity was being hollowed out from within. The technology ambush. The Scout 60 wasn't just cheaper and faster, it was smarter. Even the base model came standard with LED lighting and a fuel gauge, features Harley still treated like optional luxuries. And for those willing to spend a little more, Indian unleashed 2 devastating packages: the Limited and the Limited Plus Tech. The Limited version added cruise control, traction control, and multiple ride modes, sport, standard, and rain, all accessible at the push of a button. The Limited Plus Tech package took it even further, integrating a full-color 4-inch touchscreen display with smartphone connectivity, navigation, and keyless ignition. It was everything modern riders wanted, and everything Harley refused to offer. While Indian's tech packages were lighting up showrooms, the Sportster remained stuck in the past. No ride modes, no traction control, no touchscreen, no cruise control. Riders who visited Harley showrooms after test riding a Scout 60 felt like they were stepping back in time. What made it worse was that Indian's technology wasn't flashy or gimmicky. It was practical, seamlessly integrated, and available at a price Harley couldn't touch. Younger riders, tech-savvy commuters, and even old-school cruisers realized they didn't have to choose between tradition and innovation. The Scout 60 gave them both. Harley Davidson's failure to modernize wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a fatal mistake. They had spent years ignoring what riders were asking for, clinging to an outdated vision of what a cruiser should be. Indian proved that technology and tradition weren't mutually exclusive, and that realization sent shockwaves through the market. The Sportster's price collapse. In the scramble to keep up, Harley Davidson triggered a financial disaster. The Scout 60's $9,000 price tag didn't just steal sales, it obliterated the resale value of every Sportster on the market. Almost overnight, used Sportster prices plummeted. Models that once fetched $10,000 on the used market were suddenly worth $6,000, then $5,000, then even less. Dealerships were stuck with unsold Sportsters, their inventory devalued by a competitor's brilliance. Private sellers couldn't move their bikes without slashing prices and taking massive losses. Harley Davidson tried to respond. They offered desperate discounts, bundled in free accessories, and quietly incentivized dealers to clear out Sportster inventory. But it wasn't enough. The Scout 60's price reset the entire market's expectations. The financial consequences inside Harley Davidson were brutal. Their profit margins, already razor-thin, were crushed. Every Sportster sold at a discount hurt the bottom line. Every used Sportster devaluation undercut their brand's perceived value. Wall Street analysts began to question Harley's long-term viability in the entry-level cruiser market. Indian, meanwhile, didn't lower their prices or offer desperate discounts. They didn't have to. The Scout 60 was already perfectly positioned, not just as a product, but as a weapon. And Harley Davidson's bleeding cash wasn't the worst of it. The Great Dealership Revolt. For years, the backbone of Harley Davidson's empire wasn't just its motorcycles. It was the sprawling network of local dealerships scattered across every American town. These dealerships were more than sales points. They were community hubs, gathering spots, and temples of Harley culture. But when the $9,000 Scout 60 arrived, that foundation cracked from within. It began quietly. Some Harley dealers reported declining foot traffic. Others noticed customers coming in, test riding a Sportster, then leaving to visit the nearest Indian dealership. But within weeks, the frustration boiled over. Dealers started flooding corporate headquarters with demands, slashing Sportster prices, offering better financing deals, and providing incentives to clear out unsold inventory. Many dealers were sitting on months' worth of unsold Sportsters, each one costing them money and interest, floor plan financing, and lost showroom space. For decades, Harley controlled its dealer network with an iron grip, but now those same dealers were pushing back hard. Internal dealership memos began to leak, revealing angry letters and emails sent to Harley's board. Some memos described dealerships losing younger buyers entirely. Others described veteran customers walking away in frustration when told there was no way to match Indian's price or features. It wasn't just financial pressure, it was personal. Many Harley dealers had built their lives around the brand, investing millions into their stores, staff, and local events. Watching the Sportster name lose its power felt like betrayal. And when Harley's leadership refused to give in, the rebellion deepened. The labor uprising at Harley's factories. For years, Harley's factory workers had been promised stability, good wages, and job security. But behind closed doors, things were unraveling. In the months following the Scout 60's release, Harley's leadership announced production cuts to offset falling Sportster sales. Assembly line workers were hit with reduced hours, frozen wages, and rumors of impending layoffs. It wasn't just about money, it was about respect. Factory workers knew Harley's leadership had ignored the market, let the Sportster stagnate, and refused to adapt. Now they were paying the price for corporate arrogance. The anger spread fast. Union meetings that were once routine became charged with frustration. Workers demanded a new product direction, wage protections, and accountability from the board. Then came the walkouts. It started at Harley's factory in York, Pennsylvania, where dozens of workers downed tools and walked off the production floor. Within days, similar protests erupted in Wisconsin and Missouri. The unions coordinated public demonstrations holding signs that read, "We build the bikes, they destroy the brand." Production disruptions rippled through Harley's supply chain. Delays piled up. Remaining dealership inventory dwindled without new shipments. And as the factory revolt spread, so did media coverage. Harley Davidson wasn't just facing a sales crisis, it was facing a worker-led insurrection, Indian's ruthless marketing blitz. Indian didn't just sell bikes, they declared war. While Harley Davidson battled rebellion from dealers and workers, Indian saw the perfect opportunity to strike a killing blow. And they did it not with engines or specs, but with ruthless precision marketing. Indian's campaign wasn't subtle. Billboard ads appeared across America, boldly proclaiming, "Why pay $15,000 when you can ride for $9?" Digital ads flooded social media platforms, directly comparing the Scout 60 to the Harley Davidson Sportster, highlighting the Scout's superior horsepower, better tech, and lower price. They even featured side-by-side videos of real Harley riders test riding the Scout 60 and declaring they would never go back. But Indian's most devastating move came at the dealership level. They launched an aggressive trade-in program offering Harley Davidson owners thousands of dollars in bonuses to switch to a Scout 60. Flyers circulated online and in local papers. For many frustrated Harley owners, the offer was irresistible. Social media became a battlefield. Indian influencers, content creators, and official accounts openly mocked Harley's struggles. Viral videos featured side-by-side drag races, with the Scout 60 leaving the Sportster in the dust. Comment sections filled with bitter arguments as longtime Harley fans defended their brand, while others posted receipts of their new Scout purchases. The public and media backlash against Harley. Harley wasn't just losing riders, it was losing America. While Indian sales soared and their ad campaigns dominated the conversation, Harley Davidson found itself on the receiving end of something far more destructive than lost sales: public scorn. The narrative had shifted. News outlets ran headlines declaring the fall of Harley Davidson and how Indian outplayed America's most iconic motorcycle brand. Once hailed as a symbol of freedom and rebellion, Harley was now seen as a bloated corporation that had priced out its own customers and ignored its workforce. The company's image, carefully crafted over a century, was crumbling in real time. Younger riders abandoned Harley in droves. For a new generation of motorcyclists, the Harley Davidson name no longer meant cool, rebellious freedom. It meant overpriced, out-of-touch corporate branding. The rise of the Scout 60 became more than a product story, it became a cultural moment. It symbolized a generational shift away from Harley's old guard dominance toward something fresher, faster, and fairer. Media outlets amplified the collapse. Investigative pieces revealed internal memos showing Harley's failure to modernize. Opinion columns mocked the company's refusal to adapt. Motorcycle reviewers published brutal comparisons showing how the Sportster fell short against the Scout 60 in nearly every category. Even Harley's own customer base turned. Online forums, Facebook groups, and local riding clubs split down the middle, half defending Harley's legacy, half embracing Indian's new era. The cultural conversation wasn't just about motorcycles anymore. It became a referendum on what American motorcycling should be. How the entire industry was forced to react. What started as a pricing war between Indian and Harley Davidson quickly spiraled into something far bigger, a complete restructuring of the global cruiser market. No one expected one affordable bike to flip the entire industry on its head, but that is exactly what happened when Indian released the Scout 60 at a price the competition thought was impossible. The shockwaves didn't stop at Milwaukee. In corporate boardrooms from Tokyo to Munich, executives at Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki were suddenly scrambling. For years, the entry-level cruiser segment had been a safe, slow-moving game. Manufacturers charged a premium for basic cruisers, confident that nostalgia, styling, and limited options would keep demand stable. Indian obliterated that illusion overnight. Honda had long dominated the affordable cruiser space with models like the Rebel series, but even their most budget-friendly models looked overpriced and underpowered next to Indian's offer. Yamaha's Bolt, once seen as a modern challenger to the Sportster, instantly looked outdated and expensive. Kawasaki's Vulcan series, which relied on a loyal base of new and intermediate riders, faced immediate price pressure. Across the board, manufacturers realized they could no longer ignore Indian's move without risking collapse in the entry-level segment. The result was swift and dramatic. Within 6 months of the Scout 60's release, Honda announced aggressive price cuts on its Rebel line. Yamaha quietly rolled out refreshed Bolt models with improved tech and lower prices. Kawasaki slashed prices on the Vulcan S and introduced new financing incentives targeted at young riders. Even European brands like BMW and Ducati, who had mostly avoided the cruiser market, began exploring smaller displacement models at competitive prices to stay relevant. But it wasn't just about price. Indian's move forced the entire industry to revisit how they built, marketed, and sold cruisers. Companies scrambled to modernize production lines, renegotiate supplier contracts, and find ways to offer better technology without raising costs. Behind the scenes, global manufacturing strategies were rewritten almost overnight. The entry-level cruiser segment wasn't just disrupted, it was reset. Indian didn't just challenge Harley-Davidson, they made every manufacturer rethink how motorcycles should be priced, built, and sold. The new era for riders. New riders faced a frustrating choice for decades. They could spend an absurd amount of money on a brand-name cruiser or settle for something underpowered and uninspiring. That choice vanished the moment Indian unveiled the Scout 60. Suddenly, for under $10,000, riders could own a liquid-cooled 999 cubic centimeter American cruiser with modern tech, real torque, and undeniable style. The impact was immediate. For the first time in years, dealership floors were packed with young riders, first-time buyers, and seasoned bikers looking for a second or third bike. No longer was the cruiser market reserved for those with deep pockets or those willing to settle for outdated machinery. But the change went beyond affordability. The Scout 60 didn't cut corners. It redefined expectations. Buyers began demanding more for their money. They wanted ride modes, traction control, premium design, and customization options even at entry-level prices. And suddenly, every brand had to deliver. The result was an industry-wide renaissance. Riders saw better bikes, better technology, and better prices across the board. Used motorcycle values shifted, with budget cruisers finally holding resale value. Financing options expanded. More women, younger riders, and people from outside the traditional cruiser demographic started entering the market. The old guard of high-priced, stripped-down machines was over. The new era was one of accessibility, choice, and genuine value. Yet, while riders celebrated, not everyone was clapping. Behind closed doors, investors and analysts were sounding the alarm. Because while riders got a better deal, Wall Street saw something else, a brand in freefall. Wall Street's punishment of Harley Davidson. When the dust settled, Harley Davidson's stock price told the real story. The Scout 60's release didn't just trigger an industry-wide price war, it triggered a financial collapse that played out in real time on Wall Street. In the first quarter after the Scout 60 hit dealerships, Harley-Davidson sales numbers dropped by double digits. Investors who had once seen Harley as an unshakable American institution began dumping their shares. In a matter of weeks, Harley's market capitalization shrank by billions of dollars. The problem wasn't just sales, it was confidence. Wall Street analysts sounded the alarm that Harley-Davidson's entire business model had been exposed. For years, Harley had relied on premium pricing, brand loyalty, and a stagnant product line to deliver steady profits. Indian had shattered that illusion. Suddenly, Harley was bleeding customers, slashing prices, and burning cash just to stay in the fight. Quarterly reports painted an even uglier picture. Harley-Davidson was forced to cut production, lay off workers, and offer desperate incentives to move unsold inventory. Profit margins shrank to historic lows. Credit agencies downgraded Harley's debt. Financial institutions labeled the company as a high-risk investment. Investor confidence evaporated. Shareholders demanded leadership changes. Rumors swirled about potential buyouts, mergers, or even bankruptcy proceedings. And as Harley's financial position crumbled, the broader economic consequences started to mount. Suppliers, dealerships, and local economies tied to Harley's network began to feel the squeeze. But Wall Street's punishment wasn't the end of the story. Because when big money starts moving, politicians start paying attention. The political and cultural aftershock. A $9,000 motorcycle triggered a political firestorm. What began as a simple product launch soon spilled into Washington state houses and the broader American culture war over identity, economy, and who truly defines American-made. As Harley-Davidson's stock price plunged and job losses mounted, politicians from both sides of the aisle seized on the chaos. Some blamed Indian, accusing them of undercutting American jobs despite being headquartered in Minnesota under the Polaris banner. Others blamed Harley-Davidson's leadership for prioritizing profits over product and pricing themselves out of the working-class market. Trade groups and lobbyists rushed to Washington. Harley-Davidson's lobbying machine kicked into high gear, arguing for tariff protections, tax breaks, and subsidies to protect American manufacturing. But those arguments rang hollow to many. Indian's bikes were built in the United States. The difference wasn't foreign competition, it was corporate arrogance. For years, owning a Harley-Davidson had been a statement of rebellion, freedom, and American pride. But now that image felt dated. Younger riders gravitated toward Indian, not just because of price or tech, but because Indian represented a new kind of American motorcycle, one rooted in performance, value, and inclusion, not nostalgia and inflated pricing. The aftershocks didn't stop there. Cities and states that relied on Harley-Davidson dealerships, manufacturing plants, and rallies began to see economic impacts. Local economies built around the Harley brand started to shrink. Political leaders faced pressure to step in and salvage what was left. But there was nothing left to save. Indian's $9,000 gamble had done something no trade war, financial crisis, or foreign competitor could ever do. It shattered Harley-Davidson's dominance from within. Harley's reign is over. But what do you think? Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's talk about how the motorcycle world just changed forever.